States, and nobody right now is hotter than Ole Miss. Pictured on your screen here is Walter Nolan, defensive lineman that's coming out of Texas A&M. He's going to be transferring, looking like Ole Miss. It's not official yet, but what's your thoughts about the number one overall portal player? We had a top 20 list last week, and he was number one on it. And it looks like Ole Miss, as we're going to see as we go through this list, they strike again. But what do you think about Walter Nolan headed to play for Portal Pete and Lane Kiffin, the Portal King?
Yeah, I think that you've got to deem them Portal King at this point after doing it in back-to-back seasons, or off seasons, I guess, and I mean, I think that Walter Nolan, first of all, is an outstanding player. I think that there's still a lot of untapped potential in him, and if Lane is doing what he's doing over in Oxford, and he's building a defensive roster that will match what he's been able to do on offense, that's scary. I mean, they were, if this was a 12-team playoff this year, they would have been in. Imagine what they're going to do next season. That they're getting, it looks like, probably, and let's see what Evan Stewart does, which we'll get to in a minute. But because I have to think that Ole Miss is probably licking their chops trying to get an Evan Stewart as well,
Yep.
bringing him in. But I mean, if they get Walter Nolan, you're looking at 4 of the top 20 players in the transfer portal right now. That's very impressive. That's might be a historic transfer portal class if you really look at it, and we'll have to wait and see how the chips fall. But I don't think that we'll be looking at another class this cycle topping what Lane Kiffin and company are doing at Ole Miss.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, this is quite a role that they're on, and they're flexing their NIL muscles right now. Lane Kiffin did a really good job of, I think, um, kind of coaching this out of his fan base. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he talked about it multiple times throughout the year, and I think that Lane is also getting better at controlling and working with a team like this. Ole Miss is adopting, and I think kind of coining a new way to have a top tier college football team in the modern day era. And I think that involves your coach evolving with the sport. And I think Lane Kiffin has done a really good job of that. And they're adopting this whole mantra of every year is a new year. And that literally means that at this
Mm-hmm.
point. You're bringing in new players year over year. Ole Miss has absolutely dominated the transfer portal up to this point. Let's keep it going and look through some more of these transfers talked about last week, and we talked about him, but we didn't dare say his last name. So there it is on the screen for you. I thought that was a fitting picture as Human Malin. Yeah, that's about as close as I'm going to get. Princely U. He's going to Ole Miss also, Mason.
Yep.
This is Ole Miss is, hey, hungry hippo they're themselves, right? They're just eating these things, these transfers up, man. And they're not just getting 3 stars and guys that aren't playing at other places. No, they're going and getting other teams leaders on defense. And Portal Pete, as they're beginning to call Pete Golding in Oxford, is on fire. What do you think about Princely U? This is a big get. This is not a guy that I don't look. Florida has been terrible. They haven't even won 6 games in the last 3 years. So nobody's, talking about Florida like they used to back in 08 and 06 and stuff like that. But doesn't mean they don't have talented and experienced players. And looks like people are starting to purge on that.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, I mean, this is the number one edge in the transfer portal on 3 or 24/7, whichever one you watch or listen to. So this is a big get. This is like I said, number one edge, and another cog in the system over there at Ole Miss for Pete Golding. I'm excited to see from everything I've heard on the scouting report for him. He's pretty inconsistent, but his highs are very high. He's got a really high motor, and when he wants to play, he plays really well and really effectively. So can they get instead of a third of those reps where he's playing at 100%, can they get 75% of those reps, and maybe he's slacking a little bit, here and there. That's going to happen. You got to take breathers. But from everything I've heard, that's kind of the only downside to his game is maybe cardio, I guess you could say, or lack of a motor.
Yep. Well, hold the bus. Don't move the bus. I got to get off the bus too, says Tyler Barron. He's headed from Tennessee to Ole Miss. Look, I'll just disclaimer. I didn't fully put my undivided attention on Tyler Barron or anything, but this is another big get for Ole Miss. They need depth in this defense for this scheme to work. For Portal Pete, he has to have really good players, and Alabama fans will come on here and they'll say, well, we already gave them some really good players and it didn't work out. We're going to see. We got a lot of guys with experience coming into Ole Miss. So we'll kind of talk more about Ole Miss here in just a second. Juice Wells was another announcement this week. Wide receiver from South Carolina. Didn't play very much last year, but or I should say this previous year, 2023 regular season is what I mean by that. Played in 3 games. The year before that was really dominant, very good wide receiver. I think this guy's about to go for 1,200 yards this year. Mm-hmm. Sounds like Jackson Dart's coming back, but this guy right here is an absolute playmaker. What do you think about Juice Wells making the switch? I guess he got his NIL raise that he was looking for, huh?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what he was looking for, really. And he
was already getting paid good at South Carolina too, though.
I'm sure. Yeah. And look, it is what it is. I think that Ole Miss is going to be a little bit more competitive than South Carolina was. So there are multiple reasons for this, and I think that he'll go over there and be the number 1 receiver right away, unless they are able to pull an Evan Stewart or something like that. But even then, Stewart lines up in the slot. I think that this is your. Look, Juice Wells can play anywhere. Like, this guy he's the real deal. He's a Deebo Samuel type in a way, in the fact that he can really affect a ball game. Look, the 3 games, go back and watch this year. The 3 games that he did play, dude was balling. I mean, him and Leggett, Xavier Leggett for South Carolina had a great year too. So, but I'm excited to see what he does. They still have Trey Harris there at Ole Miss. But if Wells is able to stay healthy, man, like you said, 1,200 yards, yeah, I think that would be very doable.